stand together, we'll never fall. We can make a difference.
Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. My name is Rob Kaiser, and I am your host. Today is Thursday, September 29th, 2022. This is episode number 432 of a show where we co-create life together, a show where you join me with my family on our small farm and homestead as we grow all around, and a show where we talk about the 5 W's and how of what we're doing as we grow our farm, homestead, and small businesses here. But today we're going to mix it up and cover a daily almanac episode. And what I mean by that is these are emails that come delivered to our inboxes every day, if you desire, from the Old Farmers Almanac. And they're just fun little emails with information like who was born on this day, what happened today in history, facts like there's 83 days until winter begins, questions of the day, puzzles of the day, and little factoids such as this. Michaelmas, September 29th, is one of the 4 quarter days that traditionally mark the solstices and equinoxes. There's a link in the Daily Almanac today to an article about more, and I'll actually link to that in the show notes, because things like this are, well, they're interesting to me because I've never heard of this before. So there's a photo of some oak leaves and some acorns, and a little quote that says, "If Michaelmas brings many acorns, Christmas will cover the fields with snow." Now, we'll see. I don't know. We'll see what the acorn drop is out there, and if that coincides with this. And here in Northeast Ohio, perhaps, I suspect most likely in the Midwest, woolly bears are also a thing. I saw one on the driveway the other day looking at a stake on the neighbor's property, or on the neighboring property. We don't know who the neighbors are yet. Well, I take that back. We just met the new neighbors the other day. And anyways, we were out there talking. I saw a woolly bear in the driveway, big band on it. And apparently that means we've got a mild winter in store. I don't know. If you're into woolly bears where you are, let me know in the comments or in the Telegram group chat or on social media, wherever you follow All Around Growth, because we are on Facebook, MeWe, Float, Twitter, and would encourage you to engage with us there. So in the Daily Almanac, we've also got topics today, such as asters, stars of the fall. Summer fades away, but the asters are just getting started, adding splashes of lavender, purple, and pink to the fall garden, also known as Michaelmas daisies. Asters are a lovely addition to the autumn landscape. In today's Daily Almanac, there's a link to this article. I'll go ahead and link to it in the show notes as well for those of you who are interested. Asters are a nice plant, very cool plant. They do indeed look like daisies, but they are definitely not of the same species, not at all. Perhaps, and most certainly not of the same genus. Perhaps within the same family? I don't know. But if you want to learn more about that, you can check out the show notes for a link to an article on asters. 15 uses for coffee and coffee grounds. September 19th is National Coffee Day. I'll admit to having a lifelong coffee addiction, but fortunately used coffee grounds and leftover coffee have so many household uses, so why waste those daily grounds? From the garden to the home to your health, discover the many great uses for coffee. Boy, that read so nicely, almost like I wrote it myself, but I indeed did not, as I'm sitting here sharing a coffee with you right now on this recording. Because in the show, I come to you raw and unedited, just like real life. Maybe someday I'll get around to editing shows, but you know what? For the time being, this is what it is, and you get what you get. And those of you who listen, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And those of you who are new, perhaps this kind of format isn't for you. Nevertheless, I appreciate you taking the time to check this out. But, you know, what you get is what you get with this show. And it's a constant evolution. It's a constant process in, you know, change, just like all of us and just like our lives. And if you don't like that, then this is not the show for you. But I'm not into stagnation. So we are always changing, always growing in order to thrive. Moving forward, there is an article on how to make elderberry syrup. Elderberries, the branches of these humble roadside and steam bank shrubs festooned in summer with flat-topped clusters of airy white flowers, now drip with gorgeous deep purple clusters of berries. Learn how to turn those berries into elderberry syrup. There's an article on how to make elderberry syrup. I don't know where you guys are, but elderberries are long gone. They are off those plants, and they are not now dripping with gorgeous deep purple clusters of berries. On my elderberries, the birds get them before I can ever touch them. And but perhaps you've got a good source where you can find them, or get a good source online. I have never made elderberry syrup before. Yes, I know. Nor do I have a good source of elderberries. So if you do, you know, and you want to, you know, promote your source, or if you are actually an elderberry producer yourself, you know, let me know. allaroundgrowth@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on social media in any of the ways that are in the show notes. There is also an article on Houseplant Care Guide. Keep your houseplants happy and healthy, from knowing how often to water to providing the correct amount of light. Here are tips to ensure that your indoor plants not only stay alive, but thrive. I'm inclined to touch on this or talk about coffee. There's also an article on classic sour cream coffee cake. This is the classic coffee cake made with sour cream. You can substitute with yogurt if desired and a sweet, crunchy cinnamon topping. It's a family favorite. There's a recipe for classic sour cream coffee cake. I'm really, you know, I'd really like to talk about houseplants. I'd really like to talk about coffee. But as I sit here and actually look at all of my houseplants and all of the experiments, we're going to go that route. So let's check out this article on Houseplant Care Guide, shall we? And we'll see what I can take away with this. I'd like to share with you some experience with propagating, and we'll see what this article has to say about propagating plants. All right, so we've got Houseplant Care Guide and tips for keeping indoor plants happy and healthy year-round. So keep your houseplants happy and healthy, from knowing how often to water to providing the correct amount of light. Here are tips to ensure that your indoor plants not only stay alive but thrive. Now guys, before I even read anything from this Indoor Farmers Almanac, or the Old Farmers Almanac, I'm talking to you about indoor plants. My experience with growing. I have 2 north-facing windows, okay, one of which my bed is located by, so I have 1 window with natural light, incandescents in the ceiling, and then I have a door with, you know, the half window above. That is all the natural light I have. So I'm working with in the best I can here in my office, all right? So let's see what they've got, because it looks like light is the first topic that they're going to cover. to learn about a specific type of houseplant, check out our houseplant growing guides. There's a link in this article, and I will link to this Houseplant Care Guide article in the show notes, of course. But let's continue reading. Light. Before you buy a houseplant, make sure your house can provide the amount of light that that plant needs. For example, if you buy a cacti, you will need a window that provides bright light or supplemental light. When you first bring a plant home, it's normal for the plant to drop a few leaves as it gets used to its new space. If the lighting is to its liking, it will soon adjust. Plants that can tolerate full sun and bright light thrive in south-facing windows. Examples are cacti, aloe vera, tropical hibiscus, lantana, and ponytail palms. Plants that like partial shade or moderate light do best in east and west-facing windows. Examples are ficus, philodendrons, monstera, and bromeliads. Plants that do well in low light will be happy in north-facing windows. Examples are snake plants, pothos, and the cast iron plant. Most examples grown for their flowers need to be within 3 feet of a bright window. Examples, African violets, gardenias, orchids. All plants require a period of darkness. It's when they do most of their growing. Light exposure should not exceed 16 hours. Rotate plants once in a while to encourage even growth and prevent legginess. Plants become acclimated to light levels, so try not to move them from one light exposure to another too quickly. Make the change gradually. If possible, especially if moving a plant from a dark spot to a sunny area. That is especially important. I'll see if I can circle back to that bullet point in just a moment. So how do you know if your plants aren't getting enough light? The plant will not flower. It will show little new growth or spindly, like leggy growth, or it will lose its lower leaves. Now, on the other hand, if the edges of a plant's leaves scorch, or if the leaves bleach out or appear dull, then the light may be too bright. And that is exactly what happens. The margins of the leaves scorch out and they burn, and your poor plants suffer. Again, more on that later. Now, artificial lighting. If you don't have a bright window in your home, you can still grow plants that require medium to high light levels. Place the plant next to the brightest window and you'll have to use artificial lighting to provide extra light. This is especially important in the darker winter months. Fancy grow bulbs and red-blue LEDs aren't necessary for your average houseplant, so don't bother spending hundreds on a complicated setup. A daylight or full-spectrum LED bulb that is equivalent to at least 60 watts will provide enough supplementary lighting to grow most plants indoors just fine. To grow flowering or fruiting plants indoors, you will need something stronger. However, there's also an article to learn about using grow lights to grow veggies indoors. And the Old Farmers Almanac, I'm sure, is a great resource for things like growing veggies indoors. But if you want a cool system, you want to learn about a cool system that gives you the ability to grow greens and a myriad number of other things indoors, then check out the Kratky system that Jack Spirko talks about. And I will link to that in the show notes, because I think, while I haven't done that, the results that I've seen and that I've seen other people experience, not just him. If this was just one guy talking about all the things he'd done and there was no one else that actually had these, demonstrable results that utilizing his systems and his methodology, like I wouldn't have, fine. But the thing is, there's a lot of people out there that have implemented his methodologies, and I think that's a testament to some of the work that he's done and the work that he shares. So I will link to an article titled Simple, Fast, and Easy Kratky Hydroponics for Growing Food. Okay? And that show will tell you all you need to start Kratky hydroponic systems at some scale and be eating food you grew for yourself in under 30 days. Okay, so, you definitely want to check that out. That will also provide some insight on lights. But like I said, I'm working with limited light here. I do not like the idea of LED lights in the space where I spend time. Even though the commercial kitchen is outfitted with LED lights, that was, I get it, but I get why the decision was made. But in this space where I spend my time, I prefer incandescent bulbs. And so in the wintertime, I'll leave them on and I'll ensure my plants get a little bit of extra light. Now, before I move on and talk about water, I do want to talk about putting your plants outside and, getting them accustomed to the outdoors. Be careful and definitely do it gradually. That is not what I did last year, and my plants got sunburned. I have one plant that most of the houseplants that I got, I bought off of the Facebook Marketplace. I don't know, maybe I paid $50 for the lot of them and the containers, some of which were nice ceramic containers or just large containers. One of the houseplants is at the time I bought them, over 40 years old. So this one is probably 50 years old that she inherited from her mother. I have some cool plants, and I learned what they do not like with regard to sun. So definitely be careful when introducing them or introducing more light to them, especially if it is natural light in the form of sun. Back to the article, let's talk about water. Believe it or not, more houseplants die from overwatering than anything else. Quick side note, more plants in the landscape die from overwatering than anything else too. More plants die from being planted too deep than anything else as well. The very first saying I learned in the green industry over 20 years ago was plant high, never die, plant low, you never know. The reason you do that is roots can always grow down to find water, but when they're submerged in water, they can't grow out of it, and they will literally suffocate. Back to the article. Most houseplants cannot tolerate soil that is always wet. Some succulent plants, such as cacti or jade, can survive a month or two without watering. Learn the preferences of your plants. The first step, of course, is to ensure the bottom of your pot has drainage holes. Otherwise, you will need to repot the plant into a pot that does provide sufficient drainage. If a plant sits in wet soil for too long, it can develop root rot and die. When to water? Starting in late fall, water houseplants sparingly until daylight hours begin to increase in the new year. The best time of day to water is in the morning, except when it is cloudy or rainy outside and there will be no sunlight. Avoid watering on a fixed schedule. Instead, check the soil and water when needed. Water when the roots in the lower 2/3 of the potted soil begin to dry. Push your finger 2 inches down into the soil of a 6-inch diameter pot. If the soil feels moist, do not water. Repeat until the soil feels dry and then water. Push your finger to a 1-inch depth in smaller pots. If it is not possible to push your finger into the soil, The soil may be compacted and need porous material, or the plant may be root bound and could benefit from being transplanted. Alternatively, lift the potted plant when it is dry and then again when it is wet. You may learn to feel its needs. Starting in late fall, water houseplants sparingly until daylight hours begin to increase again in the new year. Water houseplants in unglazed clay pots more frequently, as the porous clay will absorb and evaporate some of the water, like terracotta pots. Okay, how to water. I've got some thoughts on this in a second, but let's continue. How to water. Water plants with room temperature water. Cold water can be a shock to a houseplant's roots, like sticking your toes into an ice bath. Use filtered water if your tap water contains high amounts of minerals or chemicals. Fluoride can cause the leaf tips of some houseplants, such as peace lilies, to turn brown. Always water until the excess water drains out of the holes. Even plants that prefer dry soil should be watered this way, just not as frequently. Water gently over the top of the soil. Avoid water on the plant leaves or crown. A long spouted watering can works best. If water is not almost immediately absorbed by the soil, drainage is poor. Mix perlite, vermiculite, or sand into the soil. And for best results, remove and replant the pot in the amended soil if possible. Watering from the bottom can benefit plants too. Set a plant pot that has holes on the bottom on a saucer or in a shallow pan. Pour water into the saucer or pan to about an inch depth. Add more water as necessary until the surface of the soil in the pot is moist. Remove the plant from the saucer or pan and set it aside to let excess moisture run out. And if the soil is exceptionally dry, water may not be absorbed, but instead flow rapidly down to the sides of the pot and out into the catch basin or saucer, bringing no moisture to the plant's roots. If this happens, submerge the whole pot in a deep sink or pail full of water until air bubbles stop being released. Remove the plant from the water and set it aside to let excess moisture run out. Consider repotting the plant into a looser medium mix. Okay, just a couple thoughts on watering plants. I will say that admittedly, while I agree with everything regarding checking the soil moisture with your fingers and getting a feel for how dry it is and watering in that way, again, I'll link to this article in the show notes so you can go back and read it in detail for reference. I agree with that, but that's actually something I have not done with my own houseplants. And maybe I need to get a little bit more familiar with my houseplants. And I know that I shouldn't stick to a schedule, but there's a schedule when I do other things around the house, such as cleaning somewhat, that I keep, and that sort of gets lumped into the category of household chores, but yet I've got plants of various sizes, from 1 gallon nursery containers, 1 and 2 gallon nursery containers, up until what's likely the equivalent of a 15 gallon with my vintage, damn near 50-year-old houseplant. So, I've been able to maintain these things well enough in the manner that I have, but I agree with the old technique of getting in there with your fingers, and I'm going to heed my own advice and do that the next time I water them, or maybe even today as a curiosity, just to see how it feels. All right, moving forward with the article. Humidity is a tough factor to perfect, as most homes are fairly dry, especially in the winter. Here are some things to consider about humidity. Many of the common houseplants come from tropical regions where humidity is naturally high. They will be happiest when the relative humidity is kept at 50% or higher. Plants like cactus and succulents can tolerate lower levels of humidity. Group houseplants near each other to form a support group to cope with the low level of the low humidity of most homes in winter. Place plants in a bathroom or kitchen where humidity is higher. Set plants on shallow trays of moistened gravel to raise humidity. And pack damp sphagnum moss between pots and plants. Occasionally turning on a humidifier near your plants can be effective at combating indoor dryness. Now, fertilizer. Most houseplants respond well to feeding, but be sure to follow the instructions included with whichever fertilizer you buy. Too much fertilizer can be detrimental to a plant's health, so don't fertilize more than necessary. In winter, feed sparingly or not at all. Houseplants will be especially sensitive to overfeeding at this time of year when most go into dormancy. Come spring, plants start to feed again. This, along with more hours of daylight, will help to kickstart their growing phase. Continue feeding through the fall. A balanced fertilizer, like a 10-10-10, works fine for houseplants, although fertilizers with a higher ratio of nitrogen will promote greater foliage growth. And for flowering plants, use a fertilizer with more phosphorus. Pretty simple. I don't have much to add there, but I will say I don't go out of my way to fertilize my plants. What I do is I buy a simple potting mix with fertilizer mixed into it, and when I replot my plants from time to time, it freshens up the soil, and I consider that sufficient. My plants seem to perform just fine without it, and I have no desire to use anything that I don't need. So until I determine I actually have fertilization needs, I will continue using what I use. And I can't remember, I'm actually out of potting soil right now. I don't have a specific brand that I'm loyal to. The last bag that I had, I picked up from the old day job, and I think it was just some Miracle Grow potting soil. Again, we're talking houseplants. If I were growing food or something else that I would consume, I would give more thought and consideration into my soil. But for houseplants, ornamentals, I'll just use whatever I can get my hands on at a fair price that will suit my needs. Pests. Back to the article. Pests can be a real problem. They usually appear after outdoor plants are brought inside for the winter, or when a new houseplant is brought home. I just experienced this myself. To get rid of bugs in houseplants, push a clove of garlic into the plant's soil. If the garlic sprouts and grows, just cut it back. Spider mites are apt to thrive in warm, dry houses. Frequent misting under the leaves of houseplants will discourage them. A solution of 1 cup flour, 1/4 cup buttermilk, and a gallon of cool water applied in a mist is a good organic deterrent. Small flies may occasionally appear around houseplants. These are called fungus gnats and are harmless to plants and humans. In their adult form, although their larvae can damage young roots, letting the soil dry out a bit between waterings can discourage fungus gnats from calling your houseplant home. Your houseplant may sprout bugs once brought inside your house because they no longer have outdoor predators. Remove aphids from houseplants with a mixture of equal parts rubbing alcohol and water plus a drop of dishwashing detergent. Apply this to troubled plants with a soft brush. Mealybugs and scale are commonly seen on houseplants. A mixture of rubbing alcohol, water, and dishwashing detergent, described as above, works on mealybugs and scale too. Regular monitoring of your houseplants is key to beating an infestation. Right, somebody gave my mom a houseplant for her birthday. She received a few houseplants. One of them was in kind of rough shape, and she asked me to, see what I could do and bring it back to life. So I brought it back over here to the old office and started performing some work on it. And indeed, it was in rough shape. It was planted way too deeply. I had to unpack that thing and realized that it was covered with scale. So I initially used a little soap mixture that helped with things, and then I actually just poured some olive oil or perhaps avocado oil. Don't remember. Don't really think it matters. What you want is oil. There are horticultural oils that a lot of the nerds will recommend, but here's the deal. And there's also special insecticidal soaps that you can buy, but here's the deal, right? This is how these soaps and oils work in large part. Insects, most of them, have an exoskeleton. We coat that exoskeleton. The insect can no longer breathe. The insects don't quite have lungs like us mammals, birds and whatever. So the insects effectively suffocate when they are covered in oil or soaps, or if we're using other products, sometimes they have an abrasive quality on these insects as well. But in the wintertime, back to the article, even indoor plants, winter conditions can be tough on plants. Fewer hours of sunlight, drier air, and cooler indoor temperatures can take their toll, so be prepared. In colder regions, houseplants that have been outside for the summer should be brought in August. A sudden cold spell will be too much of a shock for them to survive. This is also a good time to take cuttings. It's also a good time to bring in plants before you start heating your home, and this gives them a chance to adjust. Wash them thoroughly before bringing them in to get rid of any pests. You can dig up your rosemary, basil, tarragon, oregano, marjoram, English thyme, parsley, and chives to grow them inside as houseplants. Keep them in a cool, sunny spot and allow the soil to dry out before watering. Snip off the leaves as needed in the kitchen, but do not strip them completely. I will be doing that with basil, and I will be digging up some Tulsi basil that was given to us by Maurice Small. After we let it go to seed, and hopefully I will be able to collect some seed from that, dig them up, bring them inside, see if we can winter them over, because I don't trust them outside. Outside in our raised bed hugelculture herb garden, we have rosemary, oregano, basil, thyme, a number of other things, sage. All of those overwinter just fine here in USDA hardiness zone 6A, 5B, whatever. I don't know. But back to the article. Divide and repot any pot-bound plants so they will grow well during spring and summer. Prune judiciously to create a compact, attractive specimen. Provide extra protection on houseplants on windowsills if it is very cold. Place cardboard between the plants and the glass. Be sure the plants don't touch the window panes. Houseplants grow slowly in December light, so reduce watering by half until active growth resumes. Hold off on fertilizing as well. If your plants seem a little worse for the wear after winter ends, provide them with more sunlight, fresh air, and frequent bathing. Frequent bathing? Yeah. Give your plants a shower sometimes. I have been known to do that. Just turn on the shower to a warmish temperature. You don't want to scald them, but just give them a bath. Give them a soak. Plants like rain, get that dust off them, clean them up. More houseplant care tips. Back to the article. Save the unsalted water from cooking pasta. Oh, you know what? There was something else that... Back to these bugs. Pests. Yeah, a clove of garlic in the soil. I don't know about that. Spider mites. Here's how, not sure if you have them. Here's what you do. Grab a piece of paper, white piece of paper, hold it in different places of your plant, tap it, flick it with your finger, see what falls off. You'll see little tiny red mites moving around on that paper. I don't know about this 1 cup flour, buttermilk, and I don't know about that. I've never really had to deal with spider mites inside, but the white paper shake, plant shake is the best way to check for them. And then we talked about oil and soaps. But here's some different houseplant care tips. Save the unsalted water from cooking pasta. Let it cool and then use it to water houseplants. Use it only if the pasta water is unsalted. The plants will appreciate the starchy supplement. And if algae appears on the soil of your houseplants, loosen the dirt in your pot. It's pure. That sounds like a pain in the ass to let it cool and just, so forget about it. Open the doors and windows when temperatures permits to give your house a change of air. This will benefit you and your houseplants. Of course, try to exchange air in your home as much as possible and freshen it up. Definitely good stuff there. Reinvigorate your houseplants by removing the top 1/4 inch of soil and top dressing with fresh potting soil. That's a good idea, something I've never done, but something I might consider when I finally get around to picking up some potting soil as well. And if your houseplant's leaves grow dusty, gently wipe them down with a wet paper towel. Too much dust can clog a plant's stomata, their pores on their leaves, making it harder for the plant to breathe. And they recommend leaving some tips for taking care of houseplants in the comments below, which there are several of. So guys, if you want to read this article, maybe leave a comment in the Old Farmers Almanac as well, go ahead and do so. I'll link to that in the show notes. But that is about it for today's show. I do not really know what we're going to get into tomorrow because it's the end of the week tomorrow. And yeah, it's so who knows? If you have any ideas though, and you want to provide some feedback for the show and see if you can take it in a direction that you want to take it, then let me know. You know how to do that. All the ways to contact me and reach out are in the show notes. So I would encourage you to check that out if you want to reach out to me, and also if you want to see links to everything that was discussed in today's show. All right, guys, that is it for today. I definitely look forward to wrapping up the week with you tomorrow. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.
that we can help somebody along the way. People may think that it's odd that I believe in friendship and love. Truth is always the best way to the world that may seem odd. I'm an odd fellow. You're an odd